Welcome to Sewing Back. My name is Brandy, and we're in the kitchen. It is a nasty, nasty rainy day. Matter of fact, it's going to be rainy days for the next several days. So it's not terribly cold, but just yucky. It's yucky with the dogs and the chickens and all the things, but that's what it is. So with that, we are in full-on basketball season, and we actually have a home game tonight around 5, yeah, I think it's about 5:30, and I figure we'll be home by 7 because it's a home game. We don't live far from the school, and I want to go ahead and get dinner cooked because I want us, when we come home, we can just do a reheat because we're not going out and we're not getting fast food. It's just not, it's not good for you. We've already kind of had a lot of indulging over Thanksgiving and the whole month of November with all the birthdays we had. So trying to kind of clean that up a little bit. And for tonight's dinner, I had on my menu to do a beef stew, and I'm out of beef stew meat. Where I order my cow share from, I was ready to place an order. I didn't need a whole share, but I wanted to place a bulk order of stew meat and some more ground beef. And unfortunately, they got the flu, so they were going to have a delivery date. They've had to postpone it, so I didn't have that, but I still had ground beef from our cow share in the refrigerator. So I decided, well, I'm not going to go to the store, because originally I thought, well, I'll just go to the store, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to go to the store. I'm going to use what I have. I have stuff here I can do. And it's one of the reasons I love to can, because I have fresh tomatoes that I canned out of my garden, and I also had canned beef broth back in the spring after Easter. My mother-in-law had given us beef bones from a prime rib that she had purchased and she had roasted, and I made beef bone broth out of them. And I knew I had vegetables that have the carrots, the corn, the potatoes, green beans, has everything in it from Aldi's. I have a lot of these on my shelf. I keep them on my shelf. I have some that are dehydrated, but they don't have the potatoes. And I didn't want to go to the store in the rain when I had things on my shelf I could use. So I decided tonight would be the perfect night to make stone soup. It's what I call stone soup. If you're not familiar with the story of stone soup, boy, have you missed out. I taught this story all the years that I was teaching, particularly when I was teaching first grade. Because it was always on our reading rotation, and it was a big day in my classroom because all the kids would bring something to share in our stone soup, and we would actually have a day in the classroom where we cooked, and we made cornbread and stone soup, and we would enjoy it as a class, and we would make a big batch, and then we would share it with our school. It was a smaller school. And in our lunchroom, we could go share it, and typically the older kids and staff would finish it off, and it tied in really wonderfully with the lessons of the story of stone soup. So right now, I'm trying to get my cornbread mixed up, and so if you're not familiar with the story of stone soup, I think the first time I ever heard the story of stone soup was when I was a little girl, and I watched Little House on the Prairie. And it was it's the episode where Ma Ingle has to substitute in the classroom, and so she tells the kids the story of stone soup. And essentially, it is a story that was written after the war, and it was about 3 soldiers who were trying to make their way through the French countryside to get home. And they stopped in this little town because they were hungry. They didn't have anything to eat. They basically had what clothing they had on them, and that was about it. And they were tired and hungry, And the people of this town who had just went through the Great War, well, I think they, in a lot of ways, behaved a lot of the ways that most people would behave. They had been through difficult times. They were just getting to a place where they were trying to get back. I don't even think it's normal, you know, but so that they had enough food to feed their families. They had their towns that had damage and all the things. And so they wanted to conserve what little they had. So, of course, when these soldiers came and they asked, did they have anything they could spare? Of course, the answer was no. We don't even have, you know, enough for our family. And so, over and over again in the town, that's what they're told. They're told that they have nothing to share. And I always like to teach on this because I think it's very easy for all of us to kind of fall into that category at some point in our life where we're squirreling away. Maybe we're living in difficult times. A lot of people are living through difficult times right now with, you know, coming out of COVID and inflation and all those things. I mean, those are real things. They hit real budgets. And so it makes a lot of sense to kind of pull in. And the beautiful thing about the story of Stone Soup, where they got outwitted. The soldiers went out there and literally they built a fire, they found water in the stream, and they had a stone. And so they put a stone in this pot and they start stirring it and they start talking about how great this soup is going to be, and this would have been what the kings would have eaten and all the different things. And people in the town, just like people are, they're curious, what's going on? And so they go out and they'd hear about this delectable stone soup. And all of a sudden they were like, well, you know, I have some carrots we could put in there. And, you know, then someone else was like, I have cabbages. And before you know it, they have a real pot of soup that they add to their stone. And they share in this meal, and no one was really out much of anything. Everyone put a little bit in, and by putting in a little bit, everyone was fed and nourished. And then, of course, as the story goes, all of a sudden they had room in their houses where these soldiers who had what they thought had dined with kings and important people could sleep in their house. And so they were able to get a good night's sleep. And so it has a great moral in the story, essentially that it is better to give, you know, and to give, you don't have to give hugely. You know, if we all give a little, we can bless others that sojourn around us. And so, and that it's a good thing to do. And so that's essentially what we would do. And I had I tied everything into these lessons. We did writing centers with them, and we did math, we did measurements. The kids actually cooked everything. They cut all the vegetables that they brought in. They cooked the meat. I mean, I monitored them, but they actually got to cook. And this was a huge deal for them. Because one of the things that the kids would always tell, my mommy won't let me cook in the kitchen. My mommy says I make a mess. And so they were so excited to get to take part in all of that. So if you're a mommy or a grandmommy or whatever, bring those babies in there and enjoy the mess. I have pictures of my little ones and over the stove stirring our stone soup and wearing their little, one of them's in a pull-up, man. He'd probably be mortified. But because I would do this as my boys hit a certain age. And but they were stirring the soup, they helped make it, and it's just a favorite in our house. Now, do we put a stone in it? No, we don't. But essentially it evolves whenever I make it. It's kind of what I have. And so that's no different than what it's going to be today. So we're going to go over to the stove. I'm waiting for my pan to get heated up for my cornbread. And we need to saute some onions. I already have cut up left over from pizza night. And I have some ground beef that I got out that's defrosted. And we're gonna brown those up. I am gonna take my tomatoes because these were just jarred tomatoes. And I'm gonna put them in the blender and pulverize them because I have one who does not like tomato chunks. So it makes it kind of smooth. And then I have my beef bone broth. And then I'm just going to add I have 4 canned vegetables that I'm going to put in there and some spices and heat it up, and dinner's done. And it's one of those great ones that I'll have it all cooked, then I can turn the stove off and the cornbread will be done and can come out and we can go to our basketball game, and when we come home we literally can heat it up in 5 minutes. And dinner, we have a home cooked meal that's nutritious and good for us and delicious. And so anyway, still heating up. I went ahead so you didn't have to hear the blender, and I just pulverized I did 1 quart and 1 pint of the tomatoes. All this was just tomatoes, and I had a little bit of fresh basil from the garden that I had put in there, and I put them in here. I just pulverized them, and my kids will prefer that. You could have left them the other way. I just know what my family likes. So with that, I want to get this pan heating up, and I'm going to use some of my cilantro. This is my favorite infused olive oil. It's from my friend's store, Olive Tree and Vine, and it's the cilantro and roasted onion. If I could only have one infused oil, it would always be this one. I just love it. And so I'm going to put some olive oil in here. I'm going to let it get heated up, and then these were my diced up onions that we had that we had the other night from pizza night that we didn't use all of. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these onions in here. Now you could use, this is a red onion, you can use a white onion, you can use whatever onion you want. You can put anything in this. A lot of people will put cabbage. Now I don't put cabbage in it because I know my kids won't necessarily want that. And so I'd eat it. I love cabbage. I'd eat it just about any way I could get it. But I knew I already had this cut up. That's one of the nice things. If you're cutting that stuff for one meal, go ahead and cut up enough for other meals within the week that you can use. And you'll be so thankful you saved yourself that time. This was just easy when I was cutting up onions. And honestly, I cut up the onions for stir fry that we had on Friday, and I cut enough for pizza night, and I still had some left over. I had also cut up all of my vegetables so that they're just ready to go. It makes for a quick dinner. It makes for your life a little bit easier when you're usually tired and feeling stressed and rushed to get dinner on the table at a decent time. And so that is just a helpful prep tip that you can do. Just like when I come home from the store, if I get chicken that I'm going to cut up and marinate, or a pork tenderloin, I go ahead and do it then. Before I ever hit the freezer, I go ahead and do that work then, because it'll make dinner time so much easier. So one of the great things about this recipe is if you're trying to make your, like your meat things go further, you can. So I typically use 1 pound of lean ground beef, but Maybe you don't have a pound. Or maybe you don't have meat at all. You can totally make this as a vegetable soup without any beef. You could just use some vegetable broth. Just make sure if you do that you're seasoning it up well. You're gonna want to drain it, okay? So if you're getting the fuller fat meat, you are gonna want to drain off the excess fat from your meat if you're using that. When you buy like a beef share, or this has just been my experience, of when I bought the beef share or when I went to like my local farmers markets and bought from local ranchers, the beef that they sell tends to be very lean. Like really, really lean. And because I get grass-fed, grass-finished beef. And so that one, it's a little different. But then I've seen like the it says grass-fed. I don't think it says grass-finished like at Aldi's that they sell. It has a lot of fat. So I think it's the finishing off with grass, not just that you can say they had access to grass, that it changes that, in my opinion. It also changes the flavor a little bit. So if you're not used to that, some people don't like that. Some people can't tell a difference. We're kind of used to it now. So, but at first it was different when we kind of moved more that direction. And I don't say that in any judgment of whatever beef you eat. I actually moved to grass-fed beef and stuff because I got sick. And I had a lot of health and autoimmune things that were going on, and it was recommended, the little bit of beef that I did eat and consume was to be grass-fed, grass-finished, and so that's what I did. And we just kind of moved over. And at first it was like the Aldi I saw, or wherever, Trader Joe, but those were not finished beefs. I just didn't have the knowledge at that point in time to know that. Now, if you'll notice, this is a new pepper grinder I got from the health food store, and this has a lot of different peppercorns, because I always, in any soup, I add some turmeric. Turmeric has such a, it's an anti-inflammatory, and it's just good. But to activate that, you have to have some kind of pepper. So that is why I did that. And then this is my Tuscan blend that I love so much. And I'm seasoning this one really heavy because this is just straight up tomatoes. This is tomatoes. They don't have anything in it. The beef broth has a little bit of salt. And then I did cook it with like, I can't think of, garlic and things like that. I have a little tomato paste. And I am looking for, I have a jar of minced garlic, and I'm just going to use this because I don't want to fool with garlic right now. And so I'm not going to. And I'm going to put some fresh garlic in here. And then I'm just going to stir this up. Oh, that smells really good. Oh, really good. And I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of tomato paste. Now mine has no salt added. I got it from Azure. It is nice to have that on hand because a lot of times when you use your own tomatoes, you won't get that thickness. And so having the paste is helpful. Alright, so now I'm just going to take my blended up tomatoes. I'm going to add them in here. Now, if you don't have any tomatoes, the way I always did this a lot in my classroom was you certainly could use a stewed tomato, but I knew that most of my kids would not want those chunks of tomatoes, and so we would do a boxed tomato soup. And I usually did this too because I usually had allergy kids, and Trader Joe's has one, and if not Pacific Foods or something like that, they make one, and we would use that as our base in the classroom. Because I can tell you nowadays, if you're a classroom teacher, kids have all kinds of allergies, and I mean all kinds. And many of them have EpiPens. It's not just like nuts anymore. I had kids that had EpiPens for dairy, certain beans, nuts, of course, that's a given. A lot of wheat and gluten issues, which is why cornbread was what we did, because I make cornbread without wheat. I just do straight up cornmeal, and it worked. It was always a fun class. All right, so all we have to do to finish up this soup at this point, look how pretty that is. And thus far, that bad boy's totally from scratch. So, and now I am gonna have a cheat. And that's gonna be my mixed vegetables. Now I actually have some I dehydrated, and if I would have done this earlier in the day or in the crock pot, I could have used those. But that was not the day I was having. So, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my mixed vegetables, I'm gonna drain them, and then I'm just gonna put them in here, and I'm gonna add my beef broth, turn it down low and simmer, and cook my cornbread. And isn't that pretty? And my light just went off on my oven, so y'all know I like to heat up my pan so I get that nice crust. I'm actually going to turn this eye off. I'm going to move this back to the back eye because I can turn it down real low and slow back there. It's a small eye because I made a little bit of a mess and I want to get it cleaned up in a minute. Oops. So I've got my cornmeal over here. I'm going to need a spatula. Got one. And let's get this open. And when I always put a little oil in my pan, so you're going to hear that nice sizzle. And I'm not real worried about having my oven open because I've heated my oven at a really high heat, and I'm not going to cook this that high. So I'll turn it down and it should be at temperature. Hopefully you can hear that sizzle as the cornmeal goes into the pan. I hope that maybe this inspired you. One, yes, we're in December, but it's not too early to be thinking about maybe growing some stuff next spring, and canning up some of your own tomatoes so that when you're in December and you have a basketball game, you can pull together a delicious, nutritious, and quick dinner so that you're not sitting in a drive-thru. I hope that you enjoyed my recap of the story of stone soup, and if you don't know the story, you can definitely find a version of it on YouTube. You should be able to, and you could watch that with your child or grandchild, and y'all could make stone soup, or you can pick up the book. You can order it off Amazon, and I can leave a link to a description of a really good version of it. If that's something you want to do, and make stone soup and enjoy it, make it a tradition. And lastly, remember, particularly in the Advent season, you know, it's easy to get caught up in squirreling things away for ourselves, but it's always good to take some and give. And there's always people in need. So keep that in mind as you are going out this week. So with that, if you found value in this, I'd love a thumbs up. If you are enjoying our content, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you know someone who might like it, please feel free to share our channel. And with that, I'm going to let you go, and I will see you next time. Bye.